All right, so today I am going to be covering some wedding photography and just general photography do's and don'ts. So this was a wedding that was shot this weekend by one of our photographers, and I'm going to go through some of the images and talk about what was done well and what needed to what needs to be improved. So I'm just going to start with this very first image. Um, so this the idea of this image is a good idea. I love getting brides or grooms or bridesmaids, whoever. I love getting people in a mirror, taking a picture of them in the mirror. However, the focal point should have been here on the mirror itself and not the back of the person getting ready. So that's one issue that I see. I'm not going to use this image because her face is distorted, it's blurred out, and so I won't use it. Um, Also, this was shot at 1/40th of a second, which makes no sense at all. The ISO should have been up, probably to maybe around 800, somewhere in there. Um, 1.4 was fine as long as the focal point would have been here on the mirror. But 1/40th of a second is just, if you're shooting handheld, it's crazy. I also would have zoomed in a little bit closer. This is one of the things you have to watch for when you're doing weddings or people getting ready. All this stuff on the bottom just looks messy. The cord, this stuff, all this on the bottom. So I don't know what this white part is here on the left, but if this was an image I would keep, which it's not, but if it were an image I would keep, I would have zoomed in a lot closer to her and to get rid of all that stuff. And just doing that already, would make it look nicer if this part had been in focus. Um, See on this one, it's kind of the same issue. I'm seeing this messy stuff, this rag, this soap. Focal point is not here in the mirror. I don't know exactly where the focal point is. I think it's maybe about right here, but it should have been here. And again, it's at 1/40th of a second, which is why there's no detail there. They did raise the ISO up to 250, which is good. We're getting closer, but the shutter speed should have been faster. I'm guessing that the photographer was probably shooting in aperture priority, and that's probably why this got to 140. It's just way too slow to shoot handheld. Um, I'm gonna keep going here. This is one that I will use. The focus is here in the mirror, which is good. This part does not need to be in focus. This part here looks a little bit messy, so I could have cropped it even more than what I did, but it was a little better. It's still at 1/40th, 250 on the ISO, and so it could have been a little sharper, and it probably would have been a little sharper if this was not at 1/40th. But that is one that is at least usable. This one's at 1/60th, so we're getting a little bit better. Um, and it's not sharp here, and all this stuff is kind of distracting, but it is a little better because it's at 1/60th. Let's see. This is also at 1/60th, but at least her face is in focus, so we can use that because this is at 1.4. These are not really in focus. They're not as distracting since her face is in focus. So this is one that is usable. This one is obviously super bright. Somehow it's at 1.6 on the shutter speed. It's also a 70 millimeter, which just it looks like they're in a very very small area. Not sure why. a 70 millimeter. It was probably the 70 to 200. I'm not sure, but it was at 70 millimeters, which when you're shooting in very tight quarters, 50 millimeter is probably, um, that would be the, I guess, longest you should go. Um, Anything below 50 would be wider and it would help you in this small area. Um, Handheld at 1.6 didn't really work out very well. Um, the ISO could have been brought up. It's at 5.6 on um, the aperture, so I'm not really sure what happened with that one, but maybe the bride moved and the photographer moved. Um, let's see, I'm just going to go through. So here we have again, this is 70 millimeter. Uh, I think the lens that she has there is actually the 24 to 70. So if she had backed it out to maybe 24, that probably would have been a little better. It's at 4.5 here, 1/13th of a second. That's the reason we don't have any focus going on here. ISO is good, 1250, that's good. Let's just keep going here. This one is not a terrible picture, it's just her facial expression. One of the things I was going to talk about too is the white balance. The white balance does not look like it was set correctly for this particular lighting. Everyone's faces look a little bit too yellow. So the white balance probably should have been set to tungsten and it would have corrected that or it would have helped with it. Um, this is one that I will use. Um, I did, some adjustments, brought the shadows up on this one, but it's at 1/50th, 3.5 on the aperture, 50 millimeter lens, which is much better, and the ISO is at 1000. So this image is a usable image. I did not use this one simply because of her facial expression. Um, I did use this one. I had to pull, I had to cool it down quite a bit. Here you can see, um, but it's at 1000 or 1000 on ISO, 50 millimeter lens, 3.5 on the aperture, and 1/50th. Myself, I don't have the steadiest hand, so I try not to go below 1/50th, but it all depends on if you've got a steady hand or if you've got a tripod or not. So this one, her hair is in focus, but what's in the mirror here is not. So that one's not going to be usable. It's also too dark, and so that one's not usable. This one, the color it did not look good at all because it's just the auto or the white balance was off. The colors didn't look right, but it was a usable image for sure. So because she's in focus, I kind of like the two bridesmaids or whoever these people are being our frame here with her in the middle. I kind of wish she would have been looking in the mirror, but still, this is a usable image. I just had to turn it black and white because the colors were too yellow and it was hard to fix it. So this was not a usable image. Also, if you are going to be taking pictures in a mirror, you have to really watch to be sure that you don't get yourself in the image. You have to move left, move right, move up, move down, whatever you need to do to make sure that you're not in the picture. And then, even like this uh, outlet here, I don't like the way that looks. I'm not going to use this image. So if it was like a really good image, I might just take that out. But when you're shooting, if you can pay attention to those things, it's really helpful. This one I won't be used because of her facial expression, also because she was moving her hand and it looks kind of weird. That's at 1/50th, by the way. So the reason her hand looks like that is because the shutter speed is too slow. Let's see. I did adjust the tone on this one. It looked extremely yellow, but I wanted to be able to use it, so I just adjusted the colors there. Um, let's get a little further over here. So the things that you want to be focusing on when you're doing a wedding, obviously the getting ready images are important. The primary focus should always be the bride getting ready. Um, you do want to get some pictures of the bridesmaids as well, but I usually try to put my focus on the bride. And then during this time of them getting ready, you can also, you know, be sure that you're getting pictures of the wedding rings, of the bouquet, the exterior of the venue, the seating area, like the reception area, any of the decor, the decorations. You can always do those kind of things while they're getting ready. I'm not crazy about getting ready shots when they're wearing things like this, the one here on the left. Um, I mean, you could do one or two of those, but I like for them to get dressed and whatever. So this is just more of the getting ready. I'm going to try to go through, get a little further in. Again, to me, these are not usable. They're not in focus. This was at 1/25th of a second. It's terrible. Um, so that's the reason it's not in focus. The shutter is way too slow to get a good handheld shot. So these were some of the cake that she went and got, and it's an okay image. If you're gonna shoot, you've got to kind of make some choices when you're gonna do these types of shots. You either need to get the entire thing or get just details. This one, it looks like the top of the cake got cut off, and she had a little room at the bottom. She could have moved up and gotten the rest of it, but you know, it's okay. This is the top of the cake. This is a, you know, it's a good image. Um, I do like the background, and the detail here looks good. So that is usable. Uh, this one is usable as well. The focus is not as sharp here, but we're at 1/500. ISO is at 4,000 now, and this is with 50 millimeter 3.5. When you're doing detail shots, especially if they're up close, you want your aperture to be sharper. So if she would have gone with an aperture of like maybe 8 or 11, especially the close up shots, all the detail would have shown up nicely. Um, and then she could have slowed the shutter down to around 200, 150, something like that. Um, go on. So these look okay. It's just the gold or whatever is a little bit too bright, but I do like this bokeh going on in the background. So it's, they're okay images. Um, yeah, this was a pretty good image. It could have been zoomed in a little bit tighter to get rid of this, but overall, or moved a little to the left to get rid of that. But not a bad image. I'm not going to use this one because her face is cut off. I won't use that one because the finger's in the way, and backlight is really hard to use. It's better to have someone facing the light than to have the light behind them, because what it does is it puts their faces in shadow, but it makes everything behind them too bright. If they had turned around and had them facing the light and then shooting from the other direction, these would have been a lot better. Same with this here. They're too dark, background's too bright. If it was reversed, that would have been a lot better. So none of these are usable. That one would have been usable. I'm just not crazy about his face. So yeah. Um, let's see. This is, I'm not crazy about it. Again, because it's just the background is too bright, and um, it really distorts your lighting to have backlighting if you're not going to have a flash or some other kind of light in front of them. You can have backlight, but you need front light as well. So I'm just not crazy about any of these. Um, they're also crooked. I am going to use this just because it's one of the few that I got that I think I don't know. I believe this is the bride's dad and this is parents. I'm groom's parents. I'm not exactly sure, or maybe this is the bride's mom. I don't know, but I'm not going to use that one again. Background is too bright. Foreground is too dark. So I'll get over here. These are okay. You know, they're not terrible. My preference would have been that they would be a little further away from the background. It's always a good rule of thumb is 6 feet or more away from their background. And you can tell that this side lighting that's coming in, it's probably just from the sun, but it's very harsh on his face here. If I had set this up, I probably would have had these two switch places because if the sun is hitting her hair is darker, so it's not going to look all white like this. It would just lighten her hair and give her a little more detail. Whereas on him, it's just hitting the side of his face and head, and it looks too bright right there. Again, I don't like this side light coming in on him, but they're usable. Some of these are. We got a whole bunch of these of, I'm sure the way the lighting was hitting this looked cool, and she was probably trying to capture that. I probably won't use any of those. Just going to get a little further. So none of those are really usable. Here we have again the white balance. The I don't know. It's off. Here we have the side of his face all blown out again because the light is coming from here. Again, if they had switched places, she turns with her hair, with the sun hitting her hair, that would have been perfect. But hitting the side of his face here is just not good. We could have also had him move forward just a little bit. Whatever we need to do to get this to not be hitting the side of his face that way. So I did some adjustments with the color here because the color just looked extremely yellow. Again, this is probably fluorescent lights. I'm not sure, but always pay attention to your white balance when it comes to the lighting. If it changes and you're under tungsten light, put it on the tungsten setting. If you're under fluorescent lights, put it on the fluorescent. If you're outside in the sun, put it on the sun. If it's a cloudy day, put it on cloudy. It's going to make it so much easier when it comes to trying to edit the images. Um, so far, I'm just, these are okay, but I'm not sure why it's not sharp because 5.6 is not terrible. 400 of a second, that's pretty good. They're just not super sharp, and I don't know where the focal point was. Maybe her focus was here on the baby, or maybe here, but it should have been right here. Always the bride, on one of the bride's eyes is where your focal point should be. The eye that's closest to you should be your focal point. And if you need to get this, you need to raise this up to F8 or something just to make sure everybody's in focus, then that is what I would advise you to do. And again, these are not terrible. These are okay. It's just when I look at her face, it's a little bit soft. And so these are usable. I just would have preferred that they were a little bit sharper. And even the way the baby is being held, I would give more instruction, tell her to turn the baby around, face her out, and have her turn toward the bride and have them lined up. I never have people hug each other like this. It's just not a good look. The arms should be, all the bridesmaids should be turned toward the bride. Their shoulders should be kind of toward the cameras. These shoulders should have been turned inward, and it just looks a lot better. And This one, obviously, some of the bridesmaids got cut off, so I won't be using that one. Um, and yeah, anyway, this baby is very distracted by the flowers. Let's see. Further in. Let's go to, I guess this is probably the actual ceremony. Um, like none of these, let's see. I'm not sure what was going on here, but the ISO is way up there. It must have just been really dark. She needed a flash here, probably. Um, and then here we have the lighting is good. Maybe she didn't have enough space to back up, or she should have turned it. I'm not sure why she's holding it um, portrait or vertical. She should have turned it landscape or, you know, to the right to make it a wide angle to get everybody. And 5.6 was not, her aperture should have been on f8, f11, something. And it's at 1/5 of a second. That tells me it had to be extremely dark right here. And so we need a flash or some type of video light or some type of external light. Um, yeah, these are not usable at all. I'm not going to be able to use those. So this is a good one. Um, she's working with what she had. That is out of focus, and again, I'm not sure why it's on 5.6. Oh, it's at 1/30th of a second. I'm a little confused. Flash is the only thing I can think of, or some kind of external lighting. That's the only thing that I can think of as far as because she had her ISO at 128,000. So she could have brought this down. She could have given herself more light here, going maybe to, f 4.5 or maybe to even 3.5 or something like that. That would have given her a little extra light, and then she could have gone faster on her shutter speed so that these are in focus because none of these are in focus at all. He's not in focus. And this is the ceremony, like this is the most important time. Thankfully, that one is in focus. Um, but yeah, you can't go back and like redo these, you know, if they're not in focus, there's just nothing you can do. They're they're not sharp. And so some of these are usable, but a lot of them are not. And it's because her shutter is just too slow. And again, she's at 5.6, which is not really needed in this circumstance. It would have been better. She could have gone to whatever. She could have even gone to 2.0 on the aperture to give herself more light if she needed it. But I'm going to try to get past some of these as well. Um, yeah, just not super in focus or anything, but um, trying to get to the ones that have the bride. So this is completely unusable, and this was a very important time. This is during the ceremony, but she did, go to 2.8 on the aperture, which is good. She gave herself a little more light, but now her ISO is only at 3200. That does not make sense. The white balance is off. Everything looks very orange, and she's at 1/8 of a second. That's the reason you cannot shoot handheld at that slow of a shutter speed. She could have gone back up on her ISO, and being at 2.8 would have been fine, but this needed to be at like maybe 1/50th, 1/80th, 1/100th. Just doing it at 1/8 of a second is just, it's way too slow to shoot handheld. Again, this is just, they're not in focus. Nothing's in focus. Same thing. It's at 1/50th of a second. Most of these are just, I don't like. The lighting is terrible. Everything looks orange. 1/8 of a second. this is just, and you can't go back. There are no redos on a ceremony. You can't, I mean, you can, but it's just not what you want to be doing. So, yeah. Um, I haven't gone through all these yet, but I just kind of wanted to go over the importance of making sure you have your settings right. Um, Never going to a shutter speed that is this slow, especially not during a ceremony. And hopefully, hopefully that helps somebody.